Today, I've got for you what I think is the saddest Kraken I've ever gotten in World of Warships Legends. We are playing the Tier 8 IJN gunboat destroyer Kitakaze, which is a DPM machine and probably one of the best destroyers at Tier 8, as this game will probably demonstrate. This game happened when I was streaming Friday. I decided I wanted to save the footage and do a bit of post-battle analysis because this one is just a doozy. Right away, we start seeing some signs that things might not go well with the reversing San Luis. San Luis, of course, is a very high DPM cruiser that relies on its incredibly fast speed and maneuverability to dodge incoming enemy fire. So, what you want to be doing is sailing around on a flank like a maniac, not necessarily reversing in the beginning of the game, but it is what it is. Likewise, some bad signs are developing in the center of the map. The entire group of friendly ships that spawn there, including 2 battleships and 1 destroyer, have decided collectively to abandon the center of the map and go over to the Charlie Cap, which is going to leave it wide open for the Reds to take. Not a very good sign. And because the 2 battleships that spawn there are going to go toward the Charlie Cap along with the other battleship on that side, well, they're going to guarantee that they're all more or less going to be in the same position, which is going to prevent them from creating crossfires and performing the role of a battleship. Not great. Plus, the 2 friendly destroyers, one of whom spawned south of the Bravo Cap, are both going to head into Charlie, and I don't know exactly what they're going to do because I can't really see that side of the map, but they're not going to succeed in taking the cap. Meanwhile, as we've spawned here on Alpha, we did get vision of the Minnesota, the Harbin, and the Z-44. It would be fairly suicidal for us to attempt to push in here with these 3 ships. We know the Z-44 outspots us, and if he is able to catch us in open water inside of the cap, he's got the Minnesota and the Harbin who can both shoot at us, so we wouldn't be lasting for very long. So instead, we park at the edge of the cap. We have our bow facing away from all the threats. That way, if we do spot torpedoes, we are already facing the correct direction to run away. And if this Minnesota continues his very slow push toward our smoke screen and gets too close, well, we're also still facing in the right direction to run away. This is a good thing to do in a destroyer, by the way, early on in the game. Too often, people just push straight into a capture circle with their destroyer, go face first into the enemy, they get spotted, they cannot disengage, and they sink in short order. One way to prevent that is to carefully approach the capture circle and enter it from the stern. So that way you are pointing the right way to run away, which you will have to do if things get too hot and heavy. It is absolutely useless to your team if you are playing a destroyer to simply go into the cap and sink within the first 5 minutes of the game. In fact, if you are playing a destroyer, you don't want to sink at all during the duration of the game. This especially is a class where it is a very great value to stay alive and preserve your HP for as long as possible. There are 15 minutes, again, on the game clock. You want to play for all 15 of them, especially if you are in a destroyer. In any case, we've had to abandon the cap. The Minnesota has pushed in. The torpedoes continue to be sent into the smoke screen by the Z-44. The Iowa actually took a couple of them with his rather inadvisable push into the cap. But, to be fair, he has made it around that island where none of the enemy ships can shoot at him. And we have made it toward the island to the south of the Alpha Cap. Torpedoes are nearly reloaded, so we're going to send those at the Minnesota as he continues to slowly creep forward. But then, because we have this island over here to the right of the screen, we are going to be able to open fire with the guarantee that if the Minnesota or the Harbin or the Z-44 start focusing us, we can simply go forward and take ourselves behind the islands. Minnesota fires at the San Luis because he cannot hit the Iowa, and the San Luis appears to be stuck, or maybe not. Maybe he is stuck, I can't quite tell, but he's near those 2 islands over there, and I can tell you he's not going to be floating for much longer. Iowa gets a good hit on the Minnesota, by the way, which takes him down to low enough HP that our torpedo is guaranteed to get the kill, and Iowa honks his horn in celebration for his contribution to the sinking of the Minnesota. Meanwhile, the San Luis goes down, and one of the friendly battleships, which decided to push into Charlie, has sunk. And then both destroyers over there, well, they're not going to be doing too hot either. They're still floating, but don't worry, it's not going to last very long. Meanwhile, our friendly Iowa is on such low health that the Z-44 feels comfortable enough opening up with his main guns, and Z-44 is not really a gunboat, by the way, but he feels confident enough opening up with his main guns that he fires at the Iowa, which of course allows us to spot him, so we're returning fire. We can't quite dial in the shells. I think my aim was a little bit off in this sequence, but we are taking away the Z-44's HP, and realistically, this guy has no hope of standing up to the sustained firepower of the Kitakaze. There's really no contest between my gunpowder and his. So he does the smart thing. He decides to disengage, he stops shooting, and he goes dark. Meanwhile, Iowa is going to creep around that corner. He is on fire, I think, from the Z-44. And both of the friendly destroyers go down instantly on the other side of the map, which just leaves me and 3 teammates, including the mostly dead Iowa. Well, never mind, the Iowa is actually dead, so it's just me, a cruiser, and 2 battleships on the other side of the map. The enemy has complete map control. They've taken the Alpha Cap, they've taken Bravo, they've taken Charlie. But I want to take note and impress this point upon you. It is not really a failure on my part or on the part of my teammates that the enemy was able to secure Alpha. You see, they pushed very aggressively into the cap with all 3 of the ships that spawned on the flank, and that's fine. They were able to take it very quickly. But now the Minnesota is gone, and the Z-44 has lost at least half of his HP, and the Harbin, who we haven't really seen up until this point, to be fair, did also lose a lot of HP, I think, to the Iowa and San Luis. So these guys are going to be relatively easy to sink, and now that we know it's a lot safer to get into the cap, we can simply enter it and take it a little bit later. You don't have to instantly take a cap when you load into a game, especially if it means you're going to sink in the cap. It is permissible to leave the cap, preserve your HP, and come back later. In fact, that's much more valuable to your team than sinking in a failed attempt to take the cap, like my 2 destroyer teammates. And there goes the Z-44. We also took out the Harbin, who's on very low HP, and all 3 of the ships on this flank have been sunk by our guns and torpedoes. We did get a little bit of assistance from the San Luis and the Minnesota in the process, but most of that assistance came from whoever got the Harbin that low. In any case, we'll be able to secure the cap now, and the kill situation isn't quite as bad as it was looking a couple moments ago. It's now 3v5, and we've got the Tirpitz B headed straight for us. Meanwhile, the last remaining teammates of ours consist of 1 battleship who's on the complete other side of the map, and then a cruiser who, for whatever reason, is on the map border. It does look like he's trying to farm the Tirpitz, and the Tirpitz is just headed straight for us. So at this point, I'm thinking, well, we're going to have to do something fairly aggressive in order to even try to turn this game around. Normally, you don't always want to do open water gunboating in the Kitakaze. It's not exactly the most maneuverable thing in the world. It's not super fast, and the rudder is not super responsive. And then the turning circle is quite big, so it can be hard to do the open water gunboating, throttle juking play style that something like the Delny or the Khabarovsk or Tashkent can do. Kitakaze is not quite like that, but if you find yourself in a situation where you know you're facing off against only 1 single ship, and that ship so happens to be a German battleship, which doesn't have great accuracy to begin with, well, it's much less of a risk to do this open water gunboating thing because only the Tirpitz can shoot at us right now, and as we've seen, he's not exactly landing his salvos. There is another battleship. He's in the Charlie cap, but the island between, or the Bravo cap, rather, but the island between Alpha and Bravo is blocking him from getting any shots on me. So it's just the Tirpitz, who we are going to farm down with our DPM. Tirpitz is close enough to us now, though, that his secondaries are going off. So we're considering smoking up right now. We do hit the engine boost. We don't really want to sit under these secondaries and let us let them damage us. Finally, the Tirpitz gets one hit, I think, there with his main battery guns. So since he got one hit, we'll smoke up. He'll stay spotted. He is on fire. He just shot, so he's still suffering from the firing penalty, which means we're guaranteed to see him. And if we can continue to dial these shells into his superstructure, and if the fires continue to burn, he shouldn't be floating for too much longer. But of course, the friendly cruiser is too far away to continue spotting the Tirpitz, and the Tirpitz does not elect to attempt to blind fire me. So we do lose spot. That means we'll just get out of the smoke screen. We know the guy is on very little HP now, so we should be able to take him out very quickly. In fact, I don't even think we need to do anything to finish him off. The fire should do the trick. So we'll launch the torpedoes at the Champagne, who also, for whatever reason, is deciding to push straight in just like the Tirpitz. Not an ideal maneuver, let's just say. I don't think you want to take two battleships and push them straight into the roaring guns and torpedoes of a Kitakaze, but what do I know? In any case, the Champagne decides, yeah, I don't want to sail in a straight line and take any torpedoes, so he turns out, I think he's firing at our cruiser teammate, the Anchorage out there, who is getting closer, at least now, to the action, and maybe the Champagne is going to be able to avoid our torpedoes. I don't think I gave quite enough lead on that second set, which I used my last reload booster to launch. Little bit of an unfortunate thing, but it's fine because the DPM on these guns is fairly monstrous. Champagne is going to go down quite quickly. If we get another fire, and there it is, that should be the end of the Champagne. Or maybe he'll oversteer and take one of those torpedoes. Not quite. The guns take him down, but there's our Kraken unleashed, and nearly 140,000 damage done. It's now 3v3. We've managed to bring this game back to parity, at least in terms of kill count. But the unfortunate thing is, I'm the only one that's actually managed to secure a cap for the blue team. Did it moments ago. That's the only reason we have 331 points right now. But you'll notice the enemy team is quickly approaching 900, and they do hold both Bravo and Charlie, which we cannot contest in time. There are less than 3 minutes left to go in this game, so the only way we could possibly win is by sinking the 3 remaining ships, 2 of which are destroyers. And, unfortunately, the destroyers are on the other side of the map. I don't know exactly why the friendly battleship is all the way at the map border. I assume he's being chased by those destroyers and dodging their torpedoes, so he's just trying to keep himself alive. But at this point, when we're this far behind in points, I don't think playing defensively is the right call for either the battleship or the Anchorage. We need to play as aggressively as we possibly can in hopes that some of these enemies are going to make mistakes and allow us to sink them. Unfortunately, that is not to be. The enemy team does not need to play aggressively. They don't need to be spotted at all. They can simply rest on their laurels and comfortably win this battle, despite my best efforts to turn it around. And at this point, the question is, what do I even do? Do I try to go into Bravo and contest it? Do I continue to sail toward that smoke screen in hopes of picking up one of the enemy destroyers and maybe sinking it? Well, there's less than a minute 30 seconds left to go, and the enemy team is at 950 points. So it's only going to be a couple of moments before they actually take the win. If we get into the cap, we might slow the points down long enough that maybe one of these destroyers gets spotted and the Anchorage or the other battleship takes it out. I have no idea. There are no good choices to make in this scenario, and realistically, there's no hope of winning. But I think for our part, we played as well as we possibly could have. We more or less single-handedly secured the flank that we spawned on. We did have some help, of course, from the Minnesota, or rather the Iowa and the San Luis, but it was not a huge degree of help. And ultimately, we were the ones that had to secure everything there in order to get what we got, which is 5 kills, the high caliber medal, and Kraken Unleashed. Certainly not a bad result on our part. I'm not sure what we could have done better to maybe turn the tide there. But we do end with 2,432 XP, which is 200 more XP than the leading ship on the enemy team, the Jutland there. So, yeah, Kitakaze, a very, very strong ship, certainly a carry-capable ship. But even if you are going to carry in something like this, you do need the team to contribute just a little bit more, and they won't always do that. So it is a sad tragedy, but I hope you enjoyed it. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.